Yo creo que estamos todos ahora, no veo otra gente que está tratando de entrar en la conexión. Aquí estamos por la actualización trimestral con nuestro equipo de gestión en el Estados Unidos, Kennedy Capital Management. Ya conocieron a Don, no a Gary, a Don, sí, cuando hemos lanzado el fondo que era, hemos hecho la presentación a final de julio, hemos lanzado el fondo en el transcurso de agosto y hemos concordado con Don y su equipo de hacer una actualización trimestral. Significa que vamos a tener informaciones sobre todo lo que ha pasado en el primer trimestre de este año en la renta variable de Estados Unidos y también cómo se ha desempeñado el fondo y qué outlook tenemos. Entonces, yo ya ahora doy la palabra a Don. Lo que voy a hacer, ya Don sabe que va a hablar muy lentamente para que el inglés se entienda, pero yo al final de cada lámina voy a hacer una pequeño summary. Entonces ahora ya I turn the lead directly to Don and Gary. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Maria Grazia. Good afternoon, everybody. I believe you are already familiar with Kennedy Capital, but to refresh your memory, we manage over 4 billion US of assets and were established about 45 years ago. Um, we are a fairly boring firm. We're not a hedge fund, not a bond manager. We don't really do alts or any of that. We invest in stocks from the bottom up, as I think you know. While we speak to the economic environment a bit, we are not top-down managers. We analyze individual businesses and work to determine whether the business is a good business. It's straightforward, one that we want to own. We also do not rely much on Wall Street. Their motivations tend to differ from ours. We want to find good long-term businesses. They want to find businesses that will outperform for the next quarter. We need to own them for years. This approach has served us well for over 40 years now. We have had years that have not been great, but over those 40 years, we've done very well for our clients. So with that, I will be turning the presentation over to our portfolio manager here, Gary Capella. Gary has been with Kennedy for more than 18 years and has been in the business for about 30 years now. Mary, if you'd like to translate, then I will hand the floor to Gary after that.
Of course. Don ha hecho una pequeño summary de quién es Kennedy Capital, aunque yo estoy segura que se recuerdan, pero dice, somos una empresa que existe da 45 años, manejamos 4.000 millones de dólares. El nuestro approach a la gestión es bottom-up, significa que nos hablamos directamente hacia la empresa. No se enfocamos mucho en el contexto económico, porque para nosotros lo que guía la selección de los títulos que están en el portafolio son hablar con las empresas. Entonces no es Wall Street, entonces no es el consenso del mercado que nos guía, es más bien todo lo que las empresas nos dicen. Entonces nos tenemos el horizonte temporal de Wall Street, que es un trimestre, nos tenemos el horizonte temporal de muchos años. Ha dicho, obviamente hemos tenido años mejores de otros, pero en la gran mayoría de estos 45 años no hemos performado arriba del benchmark. Está con nosotros también Gary Capella, que da 18 años está en Kennedy Capital, pero está en este sector, trabaja en este sector da más de 30 años. Es un poco, this is the summary that I made about your first introduction. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Okay. Good. We're on slide 2. I want to present this idea of cash flow return on investment, CFROI. Some of you may be aware of it. For those who aren't, I will just give a quick summary. in simplest form, CFROI means the amount of cash flow generated by a dollar of investment. So $100 invested in the business that generates $10 of cash flow would have a 10% CFROI. We believe it's the best measure of a quality business. So it's a core tenet of what we do at Kennedy Capital. The more cash flow you generate, the faster you can grow. That is also a core tenet of what we are looking for in any good business. I'll pause there, Maria Grazia, if you want to translate, and then I'm going to point out two things on this slide.
Yeah, okay. So, la primera información que nos pasan en esta lámina a la izquierda es la generación de caja que genera una empresa cada vez que invierte $1. ¿Qué es esto? Cash Flow Return of Investments. Gary nos ha dicho que es un indicador muy importante, muy relevante cada vez que toman decisiones de inversión. Y ahora nos va a explicar por qué. Thank you.
Okay. So what we are looking at on this slide is the portfolio's cash flow return on investment versus the market's cash flow return on investment. That's the chart to the left. To the right is the growth of the portfolio versus the growth in the market. Again, the portfolio is the blue bars, the market is the orange bars. So the two things I want to point out are the absolute levels of cash flow return on investment. Around that 20% level, that's extremely high. The US average business is around 10%. Worldwide, it's more like 6 to 8%. So you can see both the US market and the portfolio generate very high cash flow return on investments, indicating a high quality portfolio. Second thing I want to point out is the difference between the portfolio and the market. You can see the blue bars are higher, indicating that the portfolio is of higher quality than the overall market. That's exactly how we want the portfolio to be. Higher quality should generate higher growth and more compounding effect over the long term.
Ok, e ora analizzando un poco más cómo estamos nel nostro portafoglio, la sumatoria de todas las acciones que están en el portafolio, que es la barra en blu, versus lo que crea el mercado. Aquí han utilizado el Russell 1000, que es las primeras 1000 empresas en el Estados Unidos de grande capitalización, decimos, ¿no? Entonces es un indicador muy general. Y vemos que sistemáticamente nuestros portafolios dal 20 hasta el 26, obviamente por los años anteriores han utilizado una simulación, ¿ok? Pero en general en este momento nos tenemos un 20% de generación de caja por cada dólar invertido, mientras el mercado tiene un promedio de 10, dice un promedio normalmente está entre 8 y 10. Entonces, sí, nos tenemos una calidad de portafolio más alta, perdón, sí, calidad de portafolio más alta de lo que es el mercado. Una cosa similar aparece en la lámina, en la charta a la derecha, que habla invece del crecimiento de estas empresas. Nos vemos que la empresa del nuestro portafolio son la en la barra blu, en la barra amarilla, el crecimiento siempre de estas 1000 empresas del Russell 1000. Y también ahí vemos que en las dos evaluaciones nuestro portafolio tiene creación de caja superior al mercado por cada dólar invertido y también crecimiento de los activos superior respecto al mercado.
I would also like to point out the rest of the presentation, we're going to refer to the S&P 500 as the benchmark. Because of licensing issues, we can't show the S&P on the CFROI chart, but just know that the Russell 1000 is very, very similar to the S&P. So it wouldn't really look any different if we had to show the S&P here.
Ok, y aquí ha aclarado una cosa importante, por ese tipo de análisis utilizan el Russell 1000 porque el sistema que tienen dentro no tiene lo Standard & Poor's, pero el índice que utilizan por manejar el portafolio es lo Standard & Poor's 500 y han dicho que la diferencia entre los Standard & Poor's 500 y el Russell 1000 versus la creación de caja por cada dólar invertido o crecimiento de activo es muy similar, no hay divergencia importante, solo por aclarar porque han utilizado el Russell 1000 aquí.
Okay. If we could turn to slide 3. Okay, so I'll start from the top left. Just top 10 holdings. The main point there is it's just going to be all the recognizable names you know of, the great worldwide companies that happen to be American that just are all market leaders. So all the top 10 are pretty familiar names. We'll talk in a minute how the portfolio also has some smaller and medium-sized companies that you might not recognize. But the vast majority of the portfolio is in these recognizable names, which are market leaders worldwide. Below that, characteristics, just a couple points. You can see that the portfolio has a lower PE. We think it's lower valued than the market, as well as lower debt levels, because our focus on cash flow usually means a business requires less debt to grow. Maybe I'll pause there.
Ok, en esta lámina vamos a entrar un poco más en el detalle de la composición del portafolio. Arriba a la izquierda vemos los primeros 10 títulos que componen el portafolio, son todos nombres muy reconocidos y le he dicho entraremos más en el detalle más adelante. Abajo, siempre a la izquierda, la característica, he puntualizado dos cosas. Primero, en toda esta característica, el price earning, precio-utilidad de nuestro portafolio es inferior a lo de los Standard & Poor's, entonces significa que nuestro portafolio es hecho de empresas que son más baratas y también que tienen menos deuda, porque también el debt to ratio es inferior a lo del mercado. De hecho, ha dicho, enfocándonos del cash flow, return on investment, damos más evidencia a la creación de caja y menos a la deuda, y esto también es en línea con sus análisis.
Okay. And then on the right side of the page, pretty quick, it speaks for itself. These are just the sector weightings and the performance. Two things to note on the sector weightings is just the overweight the portfolio has in industrials. That is on purpose. We like a lot of companies in the industrial sector, so a lot of the companies make it into the portfolio. And I guess that's the main point I would point out. The performance speaks for itself. It has not been good this year. That's primarily due to the Mag 5 or Mag 7. The major companies we all know had a very bad first quarter and start to the year. So that has affected, that's been the primary detriment to performance.
Ok, se miramos ahora a la pie chart que está a la derecha, el posicionamiento sectorial verso lo Standard & Poor's, y dice, yo evidencio solamente una cosa que decimos la cosa más importante, es que nos tenemos más títulos en el industriales respecto al índice, porque nos gustan mucho las empresas que están en estos sectores. Ahora dará más informaciones sobre esto. Y abajo, desafortunadamente, el rendimiento, conocemos rendimiento que ha sido ampliamente negativo dal principio del año, esencialmente debido a lo que es la exposición al Mag 7 y Mag 5, que componen una grande parte de los Standard & Poor's, que nos tenemos, da lo que entiendo, ahora lo que voy a pedirle, con un peso inferior al índice, pero todavía eso ha sido la gran mayoría de la explicación de la performance negativa dal principio del año. One question. Since you mentioned the Mag 7 and Mag 5, how are we positioned versus the indices within those 7 or 5 stocks?
Okay. Yeah, so when we refer to the Mag 7, that includes the 5 that we own, plus Tesla and Netflix, which we do not own. So as a group, we're underweight the Mag 7 versus the benchmark, but each individual name that we own of the 5, Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon, and Google, and Meta, I guess that is technically 6. We own
Netflix is not in the Mag 7.
Yeah, 6, 8, 7, 5. It changes all the time. We are overweight each one of those names to make up for it a little bit. All of them, we're underweight or we're overweight less than 1% versus the benchmark. But we are overweight that group a few percentage points.
So the 5, you are overweight with the 5.
It's actually 6.
We do not own
6.
Tesla. 6. We do not own Tesla, Netflix, and all the others we own in slightly overweighted.
Correct. Each
Ok.
individual position is slightly overweight.
Ok, sí, quería aclarar esta cosa por tenerlo claro. Ahora, sabemos muy bien que desde el principio del año la gran mayoría de la performance negativa del mercado estadounidense se explica por la performance mala de los Magnificent Seven. De estos Magnificent Seven nos tenemos todas, menos Tesla y Netflix, no la tenemos en portafolio. Y las otras que son Amazon, Microsoft, Nvidia, Google, Meta, no sé qué, me estoy olvidada, Apple creo, de la otra estamos ligeramente overweight. Entonces, versus Magnificent Seven no tenemos Tesla y Netflix, tenemos las otras seis, pero ligeramente, con un peso ligeramente superior al índice. Gracias. Thank you so much because that was important to explaining. Otherwise, we always have this doubt. So I go
Yes.
forward with the next slide. Thank you.
I will point out, astute observers may note that Netflix was not technically in the original Mag 7, but a lot of people refer to it there now because it's been the best performer out of all of them. But that's just a little technical nitpicky thing. This attribution page, we don't need to spend much time on it. We put it in every presentation in case we need to refer back to it. It often reveals a lot about the portfolio, but in this case, the main thing that jumps out is just the underperformance of industrials was the leading detriment to performance in the quarter on a sector basis. And that's although I mentioned we love a lot of companies in the industrial space, they did not do well this quarter as the tariff fears and recession fears have entered the minds of investors. Industrials did not do well.
So, una cosa que nos está diciendo es que a pesar que a Kennedy Capital gusta mucho el sector industrial, nos lo ha dicho, no ha performado bien en este primer trimestre debido a la gran incertidumbre que estamos viviendo y muchas de estas empresas no pudieron aclarar bien todos sus números.
Next, page 5.
Okay. Just because I want to be sure that I translated correctly. So we like industrial, but because of this uncertainty, the industrial perform poorly, and that's the major reason of the underperformance.
In terms of, yes, it's the worst performing sector.
Worst performance. Okay. So this is correct. This is what I said. Thank you.
Okay, this page, I think this shows how the portfolio is different than the S&P 500, probably more than anything. We are across all market caps. It might be a little busy on the page. Maybe the better way to think about it is over 100 billion. The portfolio is roughly 55% over 100 billion and 45% under 100 billion versus the S&P, which is about 70% over 100 billion and 30% under 100 billion. You'll also notice the $0 to $10 billion category, which we refer to as the small cap category. That's where we have a bigger difference versus the S&P.
Ok, una otra differenza grande que tenemos verso lo Standard & Poor's es el peso por capitalización. Decimos que nos tenemos el 55% del portafolio que está arriba de 100 mil millones de dólares de capitalización. El 45% que está abajo de 100 mil millones de dólares de capitalización, mientras lo Standard & Poor's tiene el 70% arriba de 100 mil millones y 30% abajo de 100 mil millones. Esta es una otra grande diferencia que tenemos verso los Standard & Poor's. Nos definimos, ha dicho, esto 17.5% entre 0 y 10 mil millones como small cap, aunque los small cap son normalmente abajo de 1 billón, pero para dar la idea que tenemos también capitalización que son menos importantes de lo que el índice representa.
Okay. Next slide. So I put this slide in here basically as a way to answer the question of what is going on with the market and should we invest now? this, I think, sums that up just to show how poor sentiment is right now. It's at the highest it's been in several years. So that tells you, certainly tells you the negative mindset of investors. Also, we need to point out and remember that this is often the best time to invest. It's a contrarian way of thinking, but over, I don't know, 100 years of the market, we've all been taught that the time to invest is when the sentiment is worse, even though that's the hardest thing as a human to do. But this chart, at least, is a reminder of that. Don will talk about the outlook in a minute, but I thought that was worthwhile to point out.
Yes. Esta lámina representa el nivel de personas que invierten en el mercado que son negativas en el mercado. No se vaya a confundir. Entonces, el nivel de negatividad del sentimiento de la empresa, perdóname, de los operadores que operan en el mercado ha aumentado. Entonces, el mercado es más bearish. Y esto es un indicador importante da considerar en particular modo cuando se tiene que definir si es el momento correcto para invertir. Normalmente, cuando estamos a estos niveles, estamos viendo que son niveles históricamente altos comparado a lo que está, algunos picos que hemos visto en el 22, en el 23, sí es un momento bueno para invertir porque nadie quiere invertir. Y cuando nadie quiere invertir, ahí sí hay las oportunidades mayores en el mercado. Ahora, I believe now Don will give us the outlook. Don, can you please, in the outlook, explain a little bit, since we are positive in industrial, but industrial, for all the uncertainty, has been the worst sector in the first quarter. What is the outlook, in particular for this sector, and how we will position the fund going forward? And also respect the capitalization. If the fact that we have less, let's say, big or huge company in the portfolio will be an advantage or not, something like that, so that we compare what we have with what we will see going forward. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, I will speak to both of those a bit. So our assessment of the U.S. equity markets today, this has clearly been a volatile start to 2025. The equity market structure in the U.S. remains strong, but there is much uncertainty. Consumers in the U.S. have quite a bit of savings. That's part of what gives us confidence in the equity markets. And we clearly have tech leadership. So we see these fundamentals as supportive of long-term U.S. equity market performance. Sentiment is driving large dislocations in stocks, though. And what we've seen over the years is this creates opportunities for Kennedy Capital. I think back to 2000, 2001, when the bubble burst and we had great opportunities to buy stocks. 2008, the great financial crisis, we had another good opportunity to buy stocks. And then in the COVID challenges of 2020, we also had another great opportunity. And I see this as shaping up as similar. Mary, I'll pause there, although they had most of that in writing.
Okay.
If you want to add anything.
Yes, thank you. Ok, Don ha dicho que sin duda el comienzo de este año ha sido muy volátil, no podemos decir nada de esto, pero la estructura de la renta variable estadounidense sigue fuerte. Y la única cosa que ha movido el mercado ha sido el sentimiento de los operadores que operaban en el mercado, que dada la grande incertidumbre, y sabemos cuáles han sido las incertidumbres, ha creado dislocaciones de capitales. Si Don mira atrás en el tiempo, cuando se han creado dislocaciones del capital similar a esto, se han creado muchas oportunidades. Por ejemplo, él menciona el año 2000-2001, cuando la burbuja explotó, ahí se han creado muchas oportunidades. Teníamos un sentiment e dislocazione similare a esta. Nel 2008 con la crisis financiera igual, en el 2020 con el COVID. Entonces, mirando a los números de las sociedades, lo que han visto es que siguen fuerte, mirando a largo término, y también ha platicado de la tecnología, ¿no? Pero sí, lo que está moviendo hoy el mercado es la dislocazione di capitale debido a questo sentiment negativo e all'incertidumbre che però in toda esta circostanza ha creato opportunidades.
Okay, thank you. There's no doubt that our president's current approach is frightening some investors, some existing and potential investors, and creating a difficult environment. No doubt about that. We believe that the uncertainty, particularly around trade, makes for more uncertainty, which we phrase as a higher discount rate of future cash flows. And we do think that until that resolves, this will be a difficult period for the equity markets. To your question before, Mary, about smaller cap stocks, before this period of volatility, we were starting to see some broadening out away from the Mag 7 towards the rest of the S&P 500. And that tends to move towards smaller cap stocks over time. That tends to be supportive of that. So if this period of uncertainty resolves, we think that will resume that market broadening. I'll pause there.
Ok, ok. Dicho esto, el resultado negativo del mercado ha sido muy difícil, pero lo que está viendo es descuento importante mirando in particolare alla creazione di caja futura. Entonces, considerando el nuestro cash flow return on investment, está viendo descuentos importantes, en particular modo en algunos títulos. Yo le he preguntado si podía focalizarse un poco sobre el hecho que tenemos un poco más de pequeña, mediana empresa en el portafolio y más industrial, y ha dicho, regresando al tema de pequeña, mediana empresa, antes de esta volatilidad sí se estaba viendo que algunas de estas empresas estaban sacando su valor versus lo que eran las grandes capitalizaciones, pero la llegada de esta incertidumbre ha un poco creado confusión otra vez, pero dice, si regresamos otra vez a la tranquilidad normal de la inversión, el valor sigue ahí y estamos convencidos de esto. Okay?
Okay, thank you. This is not on the slide now, but you had asked about our industrial positioning. So our largest weighting continues to be information technology. Tech stocks are where the leaders are in the US, and we have nearly 30% of the portfolio in technology. However, we do find that in industrial stocks, particularly within the small, mid, and large cap space, there are many opportunities to invest in great companies. So our industrial exposure is not quite double the benchmark, but nearly double. Does that help, Mary?
Yes, ok. So, se miramos a la composizione settorial, perché io le pregunté il tema dell'industriale, no? Cioè, ovviamente il primo settore è la tecnologia, però il secondo è l'industria che è quasi il doble di quello che sta nello Standard & Poor's, perché sì, ahí vemos valor importantes y pensamos que estos valores a lo largo del tiempo sí serán compensados con rendimientos. Any specific name that you want to mention within the industry that you like?
Yeah, I'd actually like to point out one thing about the industrials sector in our portfolio. And I don't want to overcomplicate it, but it's important to point out that every name that we own in the industrials sector in the portfolio is under $100 billion. So we don't own anything that's huge in industrials. And there's a reason for that. The smaller and mid companies in industrials are simply better than the big one, than most of the big ones, I would say, whether it be Deere, Caterpillar, or some of the most common large cap names. So that contributed to performance being lackluster this quarter, I think, because across market caps, smaller did worse than large in the first quarter. So that contributed more to, or as much to underperformance as industrials as the economic outlook did.
Ok,
So
otra cosa de agregar sobre los industriales es que sí, han dicho que le gustan y que tienen casi el doble de los Standard Poor's, pero todas estas empresas industriales que tienen en portafolio son con una capitalización inferior a 100.000 millones de dólares. ¿Por qué? Porque la gran mayoría de los títulos industriales que gustan están en pequeña y mediana empresa. Y nel primero trimestre y también en abril, yo creo, la performance de la pequeña y mediana empresa ha sido negativa respecto a la grande. Esta es la principal razón del, eh, della performance negativa del portafoglio, che però ellos siguen teniendo en portafoglio perché es exactamente ahí que ellos ven valor. ¿Ok?
And that's very different than, say, technology, where we're not going to find a smaller company better than Apple or Microsoft or Nvidia. Or in communication services, there's nothing better than Meta or Alphabet. So it's kind of unique to industrials that there are so many
Yeah.
better companies that are smaller. An example, I mean, I'll point out TransDigm, TDG is the ticker. They are a aftermarket aerospace parts supplier and servicer. It's been a fantastic business for the past couple decades. Everybody can pull up a chart if they like. It has grown consistently over time. It embodies the CFROI mentality perfectly. They generate high margins, which generate high cash flows, and they reinvest back into the business to grow further. That would be a perfect example of a good smaller company in the industrial space.
Okay. Can you give me the name, not the ticker of this company?
Yes, it's TransDigm, D-I-G-M.
TransDigm. Ok.
TransDigm.
Ok. Y dice que mientras de la tecnología es muy difícil encontrar empresas eficientes saliendo de los números, de las empresas de grande capitalización como Apple, Microsoft por software o por consumer services, Meta y Alphabet. Nella industriale, al revés, es exactamente en los nombres chicos que encuentras las empresas como TrainDime, que es un fornitore della defensa, aeroespacio defensa, donde sí crean mucha caja, la invierten bien, son representantes muy bien de este indicador que ellos miran el cash flow return on investment y por lo tanto nella industriale sí hace sentido estar en nombre de capitalización inferiore perché è ahí che encuentran la eficiencia, cosa no vera, no así nella tecnología, donde sí tienen que estar en los nombres importantes. I go back to the slide with the outlook now. Thank you.
Right. Yes. And to finish up, it is clear that we have concerns, you have concerns about the US economy right now. You should. It's a difficult economy. But let's not forget about the positives underlying this. So deregulation has started. That will eventually be a big positive for US companies. Clearly, we've been investing in AI, and that will begin to benefit those companies. Not only those companies, but also the rest of the US economy that will be using AI. to make their businesses more efficient. Clearly, we're bringing more businesses to North America away from Asia. I think that will help the U.S. economy in some respects. It will help and it will hurt. And finally, we don't expect interest rates to come down in the very near term, but we do think that over the next 1 to 3 years, interest rates will be lower. That will help U.S. companies.
Ok. Sabemos que toda esta incertidumbre obviamente representa la volatilidad del mercado y también la oportunidad porque él no sabe coger, pero sí hay también cosas positivas. Y Don dice, antes que todo, la cosa positiva que vemos que sí está avanzando, aunque no se platica mucho, es la deregolamentación. La deregolamentación que en particular modo favorecerá la parte de inteligencia artificial, no solamente quien invierte en inteligencia artificial, pero también en lo que van a beneficiar por la introducción de inteligencia artificial. Y otra cosa, no piensan que los intereses van a bajar en un tiempo rápido, pero de aquí a 1 o 3 años sí tasas de interés estarán más bajas y esto favorecerá muchísimo las empresas estadounidenses. Estas son las positividades que Don ve en un contexto obviamente de incertidumbre y de volatilidad.
So that wraps it up for us. If you have questions, Maria Grazia, would you like to start that?
Yes, of course. Aquí termina la presentación. Entonces, si tienen preguntas, por favor, levanten la mano, la escriban, yo la traduzco, como quieren. Pero sí están a disposición para contestar a cualquier pregunta.
Gracias, María. Yo tengo una pregunta. Hi, everybody. Don, thanks for your presentation. I am absolutely convinced that your expertise on growth equity market, including the small caps, is the main advantage that the mutual fund has. However, in Mexico, that there are some issues that could be problematic. As for example, the small caps, for example, are related mainly by regional banks, that they could have problems if interest rates are higher. For example, the lower liquidity in the equity market abroad, and obviously the last performance where, for example, the small and mid caps has been underperformed the S&P 500. So what could you say to our customers that maybe are more conservative in Mexico in order to invest on that kind of equities?
Sure. Maybe I'll start off, Don, and you can add to that. I mean, there's two things I would point out. One, we didn't put a sentiment chart of small cap or mid cap in the presentation, but if we looked at how bad sentiment was for the whole US market, it's even worse in small and mid cap right now, almost at historic lows. That sets up for a fantastic future in terms of stock performance for small caps as a group, I think. Secondly, your point is well taken on the disadvantages of small cap. We hear it all the time, and people just group all small cap companies into one lump and call it poor business or more debt or more susceptible to interest rates. But we are picking the cream of the crop of those companies. None of the small cap companies that we have invested in the portfolio have any debt concerns. They all are leaders in their albeit smaller markets. They all generate fantastic margins and fantastic returns. So if you were to look at each individual company that we own that is smaller, you would be very impressed. But all the small cap companies together do have poor attributes that people keep referring to, which prevents them from investing in the group as a total. But we've dealt with this for decades, and it always reverses, and small caps time will come, is what we believe.
Thank you. And considering just your allocation on mid and small caps, how much of those are growth and how much is value?
I would say they're all value. We don't own any single stock in the entire portfolio that we think is overvalued, which is sort of emblematic of a growth investor. That said, all our companies grow. So it's kind of a gray area when people talk about growth or value. I don't think they're two different things, but we tend to skew value.
Yeah, and I might also call it a bit of a growth at a reasonable price.
¿Está bien, Víctor? ¿Te contestaron?
Sí, perfecto. Excelente, gracias.
Ok, ahora trato de hacer un summary por todos los otros. Víctor ha preguntado diciendo, sí, yo entiendo todo lo que me están diciendo y confío mucho que están haciendo las cosas bien, pero sí tengo un poco de duda que la pequeña mediana empresa puedan hacer bien en este contexto, en particular modo por el nivel de deuda, la falta de liquidez, las tasas de interés. Y Gary lo que ha dicho es que escuchamos esto constantemente de todos nuestros potenciales inversionistas y también clientes, pero tú tienes que considerar que no compramos la pequeña mediana empresa así, compramos el best of the best que existe nella pequeña mediana empresa, perché son todas empresas que crean muchísimas cajas, que las saben invertir, que tienen margen muy alto y por eso la consideramos empresa a growth at reasonable price, como ha dicho Don, que son empresas que son value, es decir, que no son endeudadas, que no, pero al mismo tiempo que crecen, donde crecen con a un precio muy razonable. È un po' questo che ha contestato rispetto alla muy pocas empresas que tenemos de small cap, porque el portafolio no es concentrado en small cap, como ustedes saben. Perfecto. Hay aquí, veo un'altra, creo, pregunta, sí, Raúl Torres. La guerra comercial con China parece no tener momento de negociación y arreglo. Esta situación ha provocado buscar un nuevo mercado de parte de las dos potencias. ¿Consideran que esto puede incidir en el deterioro de alguna cartera? Ok. See, aquí, there is a question here that Raúl Torres wrote, and it is relating to the commercial war between United States and China. And we hear and we receive different information like you, but he's asking if in particularly look into this topic, if there are some stocks that could be penalized even further that we have in the portfolio, and we should worry them a little bit.
I'll start off there. It is difficult to find any stock that does not have some exposure to China. You go from the largest in the portfolio, Apple clearly has some exposure to China, and they are still working through how that will manifest itself. NVIDIA, of course. We feel like we have more stocks when we look at the entire universe, more stocks that have, we'll call them robust supply chains, where they can rely on markets other than China to supply their goods. There are a number of healthcare companies that we've spent some time on that we've made sure that they have less exposure to China from a supply and an end market dynamic. But it's going to be difficult to avoid exposure to China because it's such a large part of our export and import market. Gary, anything you would add to that?
Yeah, that's correct. I wouldn't add anything.
Ok, por lo que se refiere a la pregunta de Raúl, Don ha dicho que es difícil encontrar impresas en el Estados Unidos que no tengan dependencia en algún modo da China, entonces, que no sean afectadas dalla guerra comercial. Pero sí, lo que ellos saben, por ejemplo, ha dado el ejemplo de Apple que está tratando de hacer un poco de relocation, Nvidia, bla, bla. Pero lo que sí siempre van a cuidar es que la empresa que tienen en portafolio tienen alternativa de proveedores y no dependan totalmente da China. Esto sí lo están haciendo. Por ejemplo, en el sector de la salud, ahí sí, por ejemplo, encuentran nombres que dependen menos y que entonces puedan ser menos afectadas de la guerra comercial. ¿Hay otras preguntas? No se preocupen, levanten la mano y la hagan. Aprovechamos que estamos aquí con expertos que manejan el dinero de nuestros clientes. ¿No? Bueno, yo sí tengo, I have a question that I received earlier and from a financial advisor is related to the relocation. Is one of the positive things that you don't mention here in your slide. But if we have to look practically how this relocation process has been going on and what we can really tangible expecting from that. What would you say?
Yeah, it's this is a difficult one in that the process of relocating assets to the US takes many years for the most part. And we know that there is a chance that the policy encouraging that will change in 3 years. So we favor companies that already had been either starting to reshore or already had a presence in the US that they could increase. So that's more specifically what we're looking at rather than a company that will start the process now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sí, yo le he preguntado un poco relativamente a la relocación porque un asesor esta mañana me ha escrito esta pregunta en particular modo. Él dice que es difícil obviamente poder ser optimista en el largo plazo porque las cosas pueden cambiar, ¿no? En 3 años cambia la administración y las ventajas que están poniendo a las empresas que hacen esta relocalización de producción puede ser que desaparece. Pero dicho esto, sì, la stanno considerando in modo graduale e sì, questa cosa si sta passando e la stanno valuando poco a poco, perché las empresas ovviamente quieren tener más garanzia, ¿no? Por irse con todo nella riallocazione. Ok. No other question, no tenemos otras preguntas. Podemos agradecerlos, seguros. Sí, bueno, entonces parece que it seems that we don't have any further questions. I will wait your green light in order to circulate the presentation down. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll be in touch in July now for the updating of the first half of 2025.
Okay, thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, thanks.
Grazie, Jero. Ciao.
Thanks, Don. Bye.
Ciao.
Yeah,